Lucas Grayson sat in his sleek leather chair, motionless, as the soft glow of his computer screen lit his face. The late evening sun had long dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows across the minimalist interior of his multimillion-dollar estate. Everything around him, the rare art on the walls, the polished marble floors, the glass staircase, whispered luxury. Yet, despite the grandeur, the mansion felt hollow. Dead quiet. He shifted his gaze to the hallway, where the door to his daughter's room remained closed. Just like her, shut away from the world, from him. It had been nearly a year since the accident that took his wife. One rainy night. One careless driver. One tragedy that fractured both of their lives. Emily, just 6 years old then, hadn't spoken a word since. No laughter, no tears, not even a whisper. Lucas had thrown money at the problem like he did everything else in life: private therapists, cutting-edge treatments, world-class doctors. All of them came and went with hopeful promises and sympathetic eyes. None of them succeeded. Emily remained locked inside her silent world, unreachable. Now, Lucas buried himself in his work more than ever. Building empires was easier than facing the empty silence that filled his home. But lately, that silence had been interrupted. A soft humming. The gentle clinking of dishes. The faint sound of lullabies being sung in Spanish from the kitchen. Maria, the new maid, had only been with them for 3 weeks. Lucas had hired her through a domestic service agency without much thought. Her qualifications were fine, her background clear. But she was different. Too cheerful. Too talkative. Too warm. She greeted Emily each morning, though Emily never responded. She'd leave handmade paper flowers in the hallway. And once, just once, Lucas caught her peeking through the crack of Emily's door, softly whispering a fairy tale in broken English. It was infuriating. This house wasn't a playground. It wasn't a therapy center. It was a place of control, order, and quiet. Lucas didn't need someone playing fairy godmother, he needed someone to clean and stay out of the way. So that night, he sat at his desk drafting her termination notice. Not because she had done anything wrong. But because she'd done too much. Too much feeling. Too much heart. He had a schedule, a system. And emotions weren't part of it. His hand hovered over the keyboard. And then, something stopped him. A sound. Faint. Almost like wind chimes. But it wasn't. It was laughter. Small. Pure. Fragile. It was Emily. Lucas froze. His mind rejected it at first. It couldn't be. It hadn't happened in so long. He pushed back from his chair so fast it rolled behind him, and he sprinted down the hallway, heart pounding in disbelief. The laughter was real. And it was coming from the sunroom. He hadn't heard his daughter's laugh in a year. And now, everything was about to change. Lucas Grayson stood frozen just outside the sunroom, afraid to even breathe. There it was again. Laughter, light, tinkling, real. His daughter's laugh. The sound was so unfamiliar, so impossible, that it made his knees feel weak. A year had passed since he last heard it, and in that time, he'd convinced himself he never would again. That whatever part of Emily once knew joy had vanished the night her mother died. But now, she was laughing. And not just a chuckle. It was full-bodied, uncontained, the kind of laugh only a child could have. Pure, alive, free. With trembling hands, Lucas reached for the door and gently pushed it open. Sunlight spilled across the room in golden beams through the tall glass windows. Dust motes danced lazily in the light, but Lucas only saw one thing: his daughter. Emily was sitting cross-legged on a soft rug, surrounded by stuffed animals, picture books, and a few colorful socks. She was clapping, giggling, her shoulders bouncing with glee. Across from her, wearing 2 mismatched socks on her hands like puppets, was Maria. One sock, green with googly eyes, was speaking in a deep, silly voice. I am Senor Broccoli, protector of vegetables and tickles. The other, pink with yarn hair, squeaked, but Senor Broccoli, Emily has the giggles. They cannot be stopped. Emily squealed with delight and threw herself back onto a pile of pillows. Maria let out a dramatic gasp and made the sock puppets wrestle in mock panic, drawing more laughter. Lucas couldn't move. His heart ached in the most unexpected way, not from pain, but from hope. He hadn't realized how desperately he missed that sound until now. It filled the room, filled the cracks in his soul, and echoed in the silent corners of the mansion that grief had long since conquered. Maria hadn't seen him yet. She was completely absorbed, following Emily's joy with childlike devotion, responding to every giggle with even more silliness. There was no strategy, no therapy plan, no professional technique. Just connection. Presence. Heart. Tears welled in Lucas's eyes before he could stop them. The letter he had typed only an hour ago, the one that would have ended Maria's employment, now seemed absurd, even cruel. The woman he thought was a nuisance had done what no expert could. She had reached his daughter. Lucas leaned against the doorframe, trying to compose himself. Maria finally noticed him and froze, sock puppets midair. I'm sorry, sir, she stammered, slowly lowering her hands. I didn't mean. But Lucas raised his hand gently, his voice hoarse. Don't stop. Maria blinked, unsure. He nodded. Please. Don't stop. And so, she smiled, not the professional smile of an employee, but the warm, understanding smile of someone who had seen sorrow and chosen light anyway. Emily looked up at her father, her eyes bright with joy, and for the first time in a year, she smiled at him. Lucas stood in the kitchen doorway, watching Maria finish washing the dishes. Emily had fallen asleep hours ago, peacefully, after giggling herself into exhaustion. It had taken him nearly an hour to pull himself together after witnessing that moment in the sunroom. A single laugh from his daughter had pierced through the year-long fog of grief and guilt he'd been drowning in. Now, as he watched Maria hum softly while stacking the last plate, he knew he couldn't just let the moment pass. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. Maria jumped slightly and turned, drying her hands on a towel. Oh, Mr. Grayson. You don't have to. I was going to fire you, he interrupted, his voice low. I had the letter written. Ready to send. Maria's expression didn't change. She nodded slowly. I figured. Lucas raised an eyebrow. You did? She gave a gentle smile, not bitter, just understanding. Most people don't like too much noise. Too much emotion. Especially when there's so much pain in the house. Lucas leaned against the counter, the weight of the confession heavy on his shoulders. But you still sang. Still played. Still tried. I didn't try to fix her, Maria said softly. I just tried to reach her. There's a difference. Lucas studied her, something stirring in him, a realization that all his wealth, influence, and power had never prepared him to understand people in this way. What made you do all this? He asked. Why not just keep your head down, like everyone else? Maria looked down at her hands, now still against the towel. For a moment, Lucas thought she might not answer. Then she did. When I was 12, my parents died in a house fire, she said quietly. It was just me and my little brother after that. No relatives. We were tossed into foster care, where nobody really had the time to listen or love. He didn't speak for almost a year. Lucas's breath caught. I remembered how hopeless it felt. Like the world had forgotten us, she continued. So I made up silly stories, used socks for puppets, made him laugh any way I could. And one day, he laughed too. That laugh saved us. She looked up, eyes shimmering but not breaking. When I saw Emily, that same silence in her, I just knew what she needed wasn't therapy. She needed someone to see her. To love her enough to be silly. Lucas swallowed hard. No specialist had ever said anything like that. They'd come with diagnoses and charts. Maria had come with heart. He nodded slowly, voice barely above a whisper. Thank you. She shook her head. You don't need to thank me. Just don't give up on her. That little girl has more light than this whole house ever will. And in that moment, Lucas understood something deeply humbling. Sometimes, the ones with the least are the ones who give the most. The next morning, sunlight streamed into the Grayson mansion, not just warming the rooms but changing the way they felt altogether. There was a lightness in the air, the kind that follows after a heavy storm finally breaks. Lucas stood at the kitchen island, holding 2 steaming mugs of cocoa. One was for Maria. The other, a new habit, was for himself. Emily was still asleep upstairs, but he already missed the sound of her laughter from the night before. Maria entered the room slowly, still wearing her apron. Good morning, Mr. Grayson. Lucas smiled, a real, warm smile that softened the lines in his face. Good morning, Maria. Please, call me Lucas. She blinked in surprise. All right. Lucas. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. There's something I'd like to talk to you about. Maria sat cautiously, unsure of what was coming. Lucas slid the mug toward her. I don't want you to be the maid anymore. Her eyes widened. Are you? I'm not firing you, he said quickly. I'm promoting you, to family. She laughed, stunned. That's not a real job title. He grinned. Then we'll make it one. Maria's hands trembled slightly as she picked up the mug. I don't know what to say. You gave my daughter her voice back, he said, his tone serious again. I don't think I can ever repay that. But I can make sure you're never in survival mode again. He slid a folder across the table. Inside was a scholarship for her brother's full college tuition. Next to it, new paperwork for her to stay on not just as an employee, but as part of the household. Better pay. A private guest house on the property. And an open invitation to every family dinner. Tears welled in Maria's eyes. I don't know how to thank you. Lucas looked at her, his own eyes misty. You already did. You saved my little girl. Over the next few weeks, life at the Grayson estate changed in ways no one could have imagined. Laughter became a regular melody in the halls. Emily started speaking again, slowly at first, but with growing confidence. Her smile returned, and with it, the light in Lucas's eyes. Maria became more than a helper, she became part of the story. She read bedtime stories, helped with schoolwork, and introduced Emily to the same silly sock puppets that had once saved her brother's heart. Lucas, for his part, started spending less time on business and more time with his daughter. He began to heal, too, not through therapy or logic, but through love, connection, and the small moments that truly mattered. The mansion was no longer just glass and steel. It was a home now. And it all began with one laugh.